The light was sterile, cold, and relentless, like the gaze of the beings who stood beneath it. They were tall, lithe, and as pale as bone, their black, lidless eyes scanning every movement with analytical detachment. This was not a place built for comfort or empathy. It was a laboratory, suspended deep in the void, where human pain was measured in decimals and screams were just data points. Alara Morgan sat chained to the upright frame, her breath shallow but steady. The restraints had cut into her wrists, but she'd long stopped reacting to pain. Not because it didn't hurt. God, it did, but because she'd learned early on that giving them a reaction was what they wanted. And that was something she would not give. One of the aliens approached her, its elongated fingers holding a translucent panel. The symbols danced across it in red lines she had no hope of understanding, but she didn't need to. The tightening of the restraints, the hum of the neural probe adjusting near her temple, these things spoke a language of their own. "You persist," it said. Its voice was neither mechanical nor organic, something in between, artificially rendered through an interface that mimicked understanding. "I'm full of surprises," Alara replied, forcing a smirk. It didn't respond. They never did. Words were irrelevant to them, unnecessary padding. Emotions were anomalies, and anomalies were threats. The probe latched onto her skin, needles like ice slipping through her nerves. She didn't flinch. Instead, she focused on the pattern above her, concentric rings of light that pulsed in rhythm. 1, 2, 3. The same every time. A rhythm she could anchor herself to. Around her, other humans were less quiet. A young man screamed somewhere in the next chamber, his voice hoarse and broken. A woman sobbed in a language Alara couldn't place. Each of them had been dragged from Earth without warning: soldiers, students, doctors, children. None had volunteered, and none had been given a reason. Alara had pieced together fragments from overheard conversations between the Xelari, the species that now held them captive. The aliens weren't interested in conquest. They were scientists, perhaps even pioneers, dedicated to the pursuit of understanding sentient life. But their methods, clinical, brutal, unwavering, spoke of a society that had long since abandoned concepts like mercy or consent. The pain surged again, and this time Alara allowed a twitch of her jaw. Just enough. Let them think the probe had hit something new. Let them think they were getting closer to breaking her. They fed on progress. She fed on control. After what felt like hours, the probes retracted. The alien stepped back, its long limbs folding with mechanical grace. "She is at the limit," another one said, emerging from a side corridor. This one was slightly smaller, its movements more hesitant. Its tone, though still flat, suggested uncertainty.
"She adapts."
"It is anomalous." Alara lowered her head, letting her body sag. She needed them to believe she was weakening. Her plan wasn't fully formed. How could it be, in a place where she had no access to tools, allies, or even a reliable sense of time? But she had something the Xelari didn't understand, and perhaps that was her advantage. They didn't know what it meant to suffer for someone else. A noise cut through the room. Sharp, metallic. A containment pod on the far side opened, revealing a new captive.
Male.
Broad-shouldered. Unconscious, but stirring. Alara watched as two Xelari lifted the man with impossible ease, placing him onto a new frame across from hers. He looked military, regulation haircut, combat boots, dog tags flashing under the bright lights. Another soldier. Another chess piece. The aliens began speaking again, this time in a faster, more complex dialect. The new subject was important, she could tell. They were eager. Her own testing session had ended quickly once he arrived. She was being benched.
Fine.
That gave her time to observe. The man groaned as he woke, his eyes flicking open. Confusion gave way to rage in seconds. He thrashed against the restraints, cursed at the aliens, spit at one when it leaned in too close. They didn't react. But Alara saw something. Not in them, in him. His anger was real, raw and untempered. Dangerous, but perhaps usable. When the room finally fell quiet again, when the aliens moved to recalibrate the machines, Alara lifted her head and caught his eye. "They want to learn how much we can take," she said softly. He narrowed his gaze at her. "Then let's teach them something they won't forget." She allowed herself the smallest smile. Maybe she wasn't alone after all. The lights dimmed slightly, signaling another shift cycle. The Xelari drifted away, some vanishing into recesses in the wall, others returning to monitor panels. Alone in the chamber, Alara closed her eyes and leaned her head back. She had seen the core systems through the reflection in one of the instrument panels. She had counted the steps between her frame and the control console. She had measured the time it took for a full probe cycle. She didn't know yet how to get free, but she was certain of one thing. She would make them feel. The hum of the alien vessel pulsed like a heartbeat through the floor, low and constant, a sound Alara had come to associate with captivity. But tonight, something had changed. The power grid had flickered once, only for a second, but she had felt it, the way an animal senses a storm long before it breaks. She kept her breathing slow and even, eyes closed as if in rest. The restraints had loosened slightly, just enough to permit subtle movement. That was no accident. The male captive across from her, Reyes, she'd learned, had made contact with a maintenance drone during his last transfer. He'd crushed it against the wall using nothing but a broken restraint buckle and rage. And now, she suspected, he had a tool hidden in his boot. They hadn't spoken again since that first exchange. The room was monitored, their every word recorded, parsed, analyzed. But communication didn't require speech. Eyes were enough. Alara's glance, his nod, the slightest tilt of his chin, they had a plan, cobbled together from gestures and shared desperation. The opportunity came during the next probe cycle. A pair of Xelari approached, moving with that same dispassionate grace. Reyes went first. As the alien leaned in to attach the neural tether, he snapped his leg forward and kicked the probe unit into its handler's chest. The creature crumpled, not from injury. It was built to withstand blunt force, but from confusion. They hadn't anticipated resistance this late in the process. That gave Alara her window. She twisted her wrist until bone ground against metal, slipping free the way she'd practiced during every test cycle. Pain lanced through her arm, but she welcomed it. Pain meant movement. Pain meant freedom. Reyes was already wrestling the second alien, its limbs flailing like reeds in a storm. Alara crossed the chamber in 3 bounds, yanked the interface cable from the neural console, and jammed it into the panel slot she'd memorized days ago. The lights in the room dimmed again, but this time the hum changed. The ship was listening now. Its systems, once foreign, responded to her intrusion like an injured animal lashing out. Reyes slammed the alien's head against the wall with a grunt, finally stilling it. He turned to her, panting. "How long until they flood the room?" he asked. "Too late. I locked the doors when I bypassed the probe feed," she said. Her fingers danced across the console, patching into surveillance. "We have 2 minutes before the override runs." He nodded, wiping sweat from his brow. "Where are the others?" 3 cells down. 2 more captives. I'm betting they kept us separated to avoid this exact scenario. Then let's make it count. They moved fast, silent but sure. Reyes pried open the access door with a broken restraint bar while Alara rerouted internal comms. She couldn't speak their language, but she could trigger their emergency protocols. Let them believe a reactor was failing. Let them panic. The corridor lights stuttered red, alarms howling in their alien cadence. Doors unlocked, drones powered down, and chaos bloomed. The first captive they reached was a girl no older than 20, dazed but alive. Reyes lifted her gently, murmuring something soft Alara didn't hear. The next cell held a medic, Anders, judging by the earth patch half torn on his jumpsuit, limping but lucid. With 4 of them now mobile, they retreated back to the control chamber. The Xelari wouldn't be gone long. Alara returned to the neural interface. It was the key, she knew it. The probe data wasn't just stored, it was streamed, processed, interpreted through artificial emotional models. They were trying to feel pain without experiencing it. Simulation was their limit. But now the interface was inverted. And she had live subjects. She hesitated. For just a second. Are you doing what I think you're doing? Reyes asked, glancing at the alien lying unconscious in the corner. They need to know what they've done. Not the data. The reality. Reyes's face darkened, but he didn't stop her. She activated the feedback loop. The alien jolted, its limbs spasming. Its skin, once smooth, paled further as its body reacted to stimuli it had no name for. Alara adjusted the signal. She wasn't trying to torture it, just to make it understand. The creature thrashed, eyes wide, mouth open in what might have been the first scream a Xelari had ever uttered. And it didn't stop when the signal ended. It clutched at its own body as though it couldn't escape itself. That's enough, Reyes said. Alara stepped back. The others were staring, not in horror but with questions. What kind of leader would she be now? I didn't do that for revenge, she said. I needed it to feel what we've felt, so that when it wakes up, it can explain it. Translate pain into something more than data. Silence followed her words, but it was not the silence of dissent. The ship groaned, a low, aching sound. The Xelari were coming. She could see the proximity scans lighting up the interface. We can't fight them all, Anders said. What's the exit strategy? There isn't one, Reyes muttered. Not unless we take the bridge. Alara's gaze fixed on the main conduit diagram blinking on the screen. The bridge was 6 levels up. Guarded. Shielded. But linked directly to the neural interface hub. If we control the bridge, she said, we control the ship. Reyes grinned without humor. That's either insane or brilliant. Then let's find out, she said. And together, they vanished into the bloodlit corridors of a ship that no longer belonged entirely to its creators. The climb to the upper levels was brutal. The Xelari had not designed their vessel with humans in mind. What was simple traversal for their elongated, gravity-defiant limbs became a gauntlet for flesh-and-bone resistance fighters. Alara led the group up through maintenance shafts slick with condensation and humming with alien energy, every motion a gamble against detection. Behind her, Reyes carried the wounded medic with one arm while the girl, Mina, pressed close to his side, a crude knife carved from a broken probe clasped in her trembling hand. Fear still flickered in her eyes, but it was tempered now by something sharper. Resolve. They reached a plateau in the shaft just below the bridge deck. Alara motioned for silence. The console embedded into the curved wall pulsed with red glyphs, status indicators, likely, based on her earlier mappings. She placed her palm against the surface, trying to will the patterns into meaning. They've activated internal lockdown, she whispered. Full force fields around command sectors. No bypass from here. Reyes frowned. Then we're dead in this corridor. Alara shook her head. Not if we reroute from the control hub. There's a secondary link. They use it to broadcast psychic telemetry through the neural relay. You're assuming we can hijack something designed for thought forms. I've done worse with less. He stared at her for a beat, then nodded. We hold here. I'll cover the corridor. Do what you need to do. She slid into the panel's access cavity, the walls vibrating with the steady pulse of alien awareness. Everything in this ship was alive, an organic machine woven from sentient alloy and memory sponge circuits. It resisted her presence, fighting her attempts to interface. But Alara had learned how to speak in its code, not through language, but through experience. She closed her eyes and reached back, into her own pain, into the moments the Xelari had recorded, catalogued, dispassionately dissected. The loss of her unit, the fire that took her brother, the trial interrogations, the failed escape attempts, the cold silence that followed every scream. She fed it all into the relay. The console responded. Lights shifted. Locks disengaged with a heavy clunk that echoed through the walls like falling dominoes.
They felt that, she said.
All of them. Mina flinched. Won't that make them angrier? No, Reyes said softly. It'll make them afraid. The door to the bridge opened with a slow, grinding hiss. Inside, the chamber was silent, circular, vast, lit from above with pulsing rings like a mechanical iris. Several Xelari stood around a central core, their hands folded behind their backs, unmoving. Alara stepped in first. The alien at the center, taller, older, its skin traced with intricate bioluminescent sigils, turned to regard her. "You are not permitted here," it said. Its voice was layered, like overlapping frequencies. "This vessel is sacrosanct." "You broke us open," Alara said. "Now we're breaking in." Reyes followed, his weapon raised. "You want to understand pain? Try losing control." One of the aliens moved. Alara flinched, but it didn't attack. It simply stepped aside. "What's happening?" Reyes asked, voice low. "They're not reacting." Alara stepped toward the core. "They're processing." She approached the console, which pulsed at her presence. The interface flared alive, then stilled. "I can shut it down," she whispered. "The entire network. Stop the data streams. No more probes. No more testing." Mina tugged at her sleeve. "Can you send a signal? Let Earth know."
Maybe.
"But I can also do something else." Reyes raised an eyebrow. "What's that?" "I can reverse the network. I can project everything, our pain, our stories, our defiance, into the central nexus of the Xelari archive. Not just the ship. All of them. Across the networked fleet." The aliens didn't speak, but their bodies shifted slightly. One staggered. Another gripped the rail beside it. "They're feeling it already," Alara said. "What they took from us wasn't just data. It was our humanity. Our memories. That's the one thing they can't interpret. Not without becoming changed by it." Reyes exhaled slowly. "Do it." Alara placed her hand on the core and initiated the pulse. A wave surged through the ship, like a silent scream. One made not of sound but of sensation. Every recorded fragment, every stored pain, every emotional residue they'd mined from their human captives surged back through the alien systems in a cascading torrent of empathy. Not simulation. Experience. The Xelari reeled. One collapsed to its knees. Another let out a sound no human had ever heard from them before, a low, guttural cry that could only be called a sob. Mina watched wide-eyed. They didn't know what it meant. Not really. "Now they do," Alara said, her voice hoarse. A new silence fell over the bridge, heavy with the weight of revelation. The Xelari leader lifted its head, its expression unreadable, but something had changed. The glow along its veins dimmed, like a fire cooled by rain. "You are seen," it said slowly. The words felt strange in its mouth. And felt. Reyes approached Alara. "What happens now?" She didn't answer at first. She was watching the aliens, watching how they no longer moved with the same calculated detachment. There was confusion now, fragility, and something else, remorse. "They'll never undo what they did," she said. "But maybe now they'll never do it again." The ship's systems began to shift around them, doors opening, lights softening. A new pattern of signals moved through the consoles, no longer commands, but an invitation. "We've changed them," Rhea said. "Somehow." "No," Alara replied. "We reminded them what it means to be sentient." And in that impossible stillness, aboard a ship once ruled by cold precision and cruel curiosity, the first bridge was built, not of wires or code, but of shared pain and something dangerously close to understanding.